What's up, everybody? I am Nikolai Puchlov. I'm head coach over here at Pro Kettlebell. I'm also the designer, the inventor, along with my wife Amber, of the Pro Kettlebell. And I wanted to address some commonly asked questions about the kettlebell. And I guess the first one I'll address, and this is the most commonly asked, is does this flat spot right here, does this ever get in the way or negatively affect the performance when you're using the kettlebell, especially if you're new and you have bad repetitions? And the short answer is no. But what this kettlebell does do, what this spot does do, is it gives positive feedback for when you get it right, and it will give you negative feedback when you get it wrong. The great thing is that we have found with brand new lifters, it actually teaches them how to do proper insertion and a proper grip much sooner than with the old style competition kettlebells. And there's a couple reasons why this extra little bit of mass is necessary. First of all, in order to create enough surface area here to spread the weight out of the kettlebell, we needed to add a little extra girth right here, because we actually took girth away right here. Well, we had to add a little bit back here. If we didn't have this, when the kettlebell would be in the rack position, it would actually just slide out and you wouldn't be able to hold a solid rack position. So this is actually crucial to have a good solid rack position. Without it, it would just slide out. And what we notice with new people is that they just intrinsically go right to the Olympic style grip here, and they just learn the right way to do it right away. Now, we have had some people who have learned how to use kettlebells the wrong way, and they have these bad habits stuck in their head, and they will hold it with the dumbbell grip like this, and they'll wind up coming in contact with that, and one of two things will happen. They'll learn how to hold it correctly, or they won't. They'll keep those bad habits and they won't like the kettlebell. But this kettlebell is not designed for those people. The people that want to continue holding it like a dumbbell, they're also going to be experiencing torn calluses because they're over gripping the kettlebell. They're going to have wrist, elbow, and shoulder issues. So if they don't want to learn the correct way to use the kettlebell, this isn't going to be the right kettlebell for them. This kettlebell is already breaking records. It's getting people from a beginner level up to the intermediate and like master levels much faster than any other kettlebell. There's also an added benefit to this flat spot that a lot of people just overlook. They don't notice it until maybe they've had their kettlebell for a month or two, and that's that when you lie it down flat like this, it's stable, it doesn't want to roll. Whereas if you take the old versions like this, they roll over, where this is less likely to do that. It'll come back to its neutral resting point much sooner. The benefit of that is that when you're doing, let's say you're doing push-ups on your kettlebells, well, this is going to be a better platform than this. This is likely to roll off on you, and this is more stable. The really good benefit of it, is for classes. If you're teaching classes and you have 20 people in your classes and they're doing kettlebell exercises, inevitably someone's going to drop a kettlebell. Now, with the old kettlebells, and I've seen this happen in classes, they would drop one of these kettlebells and it would drop and it would roll and it would go into someone else's area, and sometimes it would hit someone's foot or ankle, and that's just a hazard you do not want in your gym. Whereas this, it might roll once or twice, but it's going to stop much sooner. So besides having a stable platform, it's not going to roll as far, so it's just safer in a group setting. And those are the main functions. Just to summarize, it allows for more surface area in a greater contour, which will hold the rack position better and be more secure. It allows for a stable platform for you to do extra exercises off of. And if the bell drops, it's not going to roll as far as with these other kettlebells. Now let's talk about some of the other features. The base. People always comment on the hollow base. There's a couple reasons for this hollow base. A, the hollow inside, and these ones have this as well, keep the center of mass higher, closer towards the handle, which cause the bell to just react better, to fly better. You're able to get quicker, faster hand insertion. It just makes doing the ballistics with the kettlebells just that much better. It feels lighter in your hand because there's less actual leverage pulling your hand back. So that's one benefit. And these have this as well, but it doesn't have it quite as much because it has this flat surface that hangs down further. So this is going to feel more bottom heavy, all right? The other cool thing about this is that because instead of this small hole, we have this large opening here. This does a couple of things. You're able to hold this and grip this, all right, for extra exercises like curls and presses. You're able to use a single kettlebell like two kettlebells, where you couldn't really do that with this. You can sort of like hold it on your palm like this, and you can maybe stick 2 fingers in here to try to hold like that, but I wouldn't recommend that because a lot of times there's like sharp burrs inside because this is not designed for that. And then the other cool benefit of this is that we've designed this to be flat on the inside so that when you add our magnetic chip weights, and I'll grab one of those really quick. Should have thought ahead of time. But when you add one of our magnetic chip weights, it goes right inside and it's not going to affect the center of mass or your performance nearly, like it's not even noticeable. As a matter of fact, you do have to be careful because sometimes you'll forget that you have this weight in here. You'll think you're grabbing a 12 kilo and it'll actually be 14. And so that's really, we thought of that ahead of time, and that's why we did that. And it's one of those features that sets us apart from all the other kettlebells that are out there on the market. Now, you can use these on the older style competition kettlebells, but this is going to feel much more bottom heavy, and then, you know, it kind of is in the way, right? And it affects the functionality, whereas on our kettlebells, it doesn't affect the functionality at all right? And it's because they were designed to work together. What else? So now let's talk about the handles, okay? People always comment on our handles. First of all, when you get one of these kettlebells, it comes packaged in a bunch of styrofoam and plastic. We don't use any styrofoam in our packaging. Sorry, I know I'm not talking about the handles. Our packaging is all cardboard, 100% recyclable. But now let's talk about the handles. These handles come with a varnish on them. All right, it's already like a clear coat. And the reason why they do that is because it's shipped from overseas and it spends, you know, months on a boat. And if they were not to do that, they would show up totally rusted and they'd look like garbage. Ours, because they're all manufactured in the United States, and I designed these for performance and to be the best kettlebells in the market. We actually do not clear coat our handles, okay? We tape them off here and we leave that perfectly bare. That way when you pull this out of your box, it is ready to go. And you can apply chalk to it or not, but a bare handle is the best surface for gripping and using your kettlebell. If you've ever pulled a kettlebell straight out of the box and it has that clear coat on it, you notice it has that really kind of almost sticky texture at first, and then when it gets wet, it's very slippery and wants to fall out of your hand. So what most people do is they sand that off when they first get it, and it's a mess, it's a pain. I've had to do it when I outfitted my gym. I had to do it with like 300 kettlebells, and I vowed that if I ever made my own kettlebell, they would not have that junk on it because it's totally unnecessary and has to be taken off. All right, and that's why we do not treat our handles. If maintaining a bare handle is an issue for you, there are some products out there. I think Kabuki Strength makes a product. It's called Bar Oil or something. I'll provide a link that you can put on, and it's like a rust inhibitor. But honestly, if you use your kettlebells regularly and you keep them in a climate-controlled room, then you shouldn't have any problems with rust. And if you do, you take a little bit of an SOS pad and you can just rub it right off and it comes right off. The other difference is that these handles, before they're clear coated, they're just ground smooth. They use a belt grinder and they grind it as smooth as they can get it to cover up any sort of imperfections, and that's okay, but from a performance standpoint, I like a little bit of texture, all right? And my favorite exercise is the kettlebell snatch, and so I've designed this to be great for kettlebell snatch and cleans and swings. So we actually leave texture, and these are all done by hand, and it takes some skill to learn how to do this. We actually leave texture on the sides here, but we do a smooth grind on the underside and on the top side. And then we blast it all to kind of blend the surfaces together. But this gives the best of both worlds. You get a little bit of grip where your fingertips hit, but then you get a little bit of slip where you need it. And these are the best handles in the world, bar none. That's why they're breaking all these records. Now, if you look at this is more of a flat tube with a fillet or a taper, all right? And the reason why it looks like this is because it was designed in early CAD models, all right? In early CAD models, we're just limited in their ability. We use advanced computer-aided drawing techniques and then 3D models and hand sanding to come up with the ideal handle for ballistic exercises. Not only, that's why you see this curvature here. It's not flat, it's rounded slightly because your hand is not flat, all right? You need a slightly rounded surface if you're switching grips all the time. The other problem with these kettlebells is because this is a tapered horn here, when you try to hold it by the horns, it always wants to slip out of your hands. It's like squeezes out of your hands. Whereas these are slightly narrower and they just feel more secure when you hold them by the horns, whether it's bottom side down or bottom side up. So we've just thought of all those things, and this is just the difference between having a kettlebell that's manufactured by the end user versus a kettlebell that's manufactured by a manufacturer that is trying to turn a profit. And so those are the differences with the handles. What other differences do people ask a lot about? People commonly say, well, these are made out of steel and these are made out of cast iron. Is this gonna break or whatever? I don't know if these are made out of steel or not. I know on the website I'm looking at for this one, at the very bottom it says it's cast out of cast iron. But then if you contact their customer service, they say it's steel. All I know is they're durable, okay? I can't complain about the durability about these. I've never seen one of these break, and I've never seen one of these break. These are cast iron, but these are the highest quality cast iron you can get. They're certified. They randomly get sampled, run through a spectrograph, and if they were to ever break, we'd replace them like that. All I know is because these are made in the USA, if we tried to make these out of steel, the cost would probably triple at least. And for a negligible difference in strength, it would be overkill for what the job requires. I prefer actually the patina and the feel of cast iron. Here's another thing. Steel rings and vibrates when you hit them together, right? Whereas cast iron, people prefer cast iron for its acoustic and vibration dampening abilities. So in my opinion, the cast iron is a better choice for kettlebells, especially when you're doing doubles, because they hit together. And if you have two pieces of steel ringing in your hand, that's going to affect your grip. It's also going to be noisy, very noisy for your gym. We actually had our original kettlebells made, hang on one second. These are some old prototypes. These are from our very first foundry, and these were made out of ductile iron. And listen to this. Now that rings, right? Now ductile iron can be classified as steel because it has carbon or graphite added to it. And it made this, it was more expensive, but it also made this high-pitched ringing sound, and you actually feel that in your hands. And that's not a great thing if you're doing a lot of cleans and maybe your cleans are not as smooth as you want them to be, and they're clanging and they're vibrating in your hands. That vibration actually would cause the magnets to vibrate loose, and that wouldn't be a good thing. So in this case, the cast iron won out again, because we did try ductile, which could be called an alloy steel. We just preferred the cast iron over that. The last difference that I can think of is going to be the paint. And in our case, we don't use a paint. We use a coating. This is a urethane coating. It's super expensive, but we found that it doesn't flake off nearly as much as these other kettlebells, which use kind of like an inexpensive, very thin paint, and they wind up just becoming almost completely just bare after a lot of use, whereas these get used quite a bit. And of course, when you bang metal on metal, you're going to lose a little bit of that coating, but it seems to be localized right here on that spot. And the reason why I didn't like all the flaking was because I was using these in a gym setting with a lot of people. At the end of a class, there would be paint chips all over the floor, and I just felt it was really, it was a mess. The kettlebells look like garbage after a while. And then, if you get these little tiny paint chips, and you have sweaty people using them, this is a good spot to trap bacteria. And people can develop little staph infections underneath their skin from the trapped bacteria unless these are really getting sanitized. And how do you really sanitize and get under the little paint chips? Whereas these ones, they never really, they don't chip in this contoured area. They only chip here, and your arm never touches that area. And so, to me, this is just way easier to keep clean and sanitary, especially when you're using it in like a gym setting when people are sharing kettlebells all the time. And if you've ever seen anybody that's developed a staph infection that's like gotten bad, it's gross, and it's something you just don't want to have to deal with. And so that's why we were very particular about the type of coating that we use. And it was sort of a happy accident that these contours they prevent you from your arms coming in contact with where the paint will tend to chip and wear away. So that's just a benefit we kind of lucked out on. But everything else we did with these kettlebells was very well thought out, and like we weighed the pluses and minuses of having this flat spot, and we actually tried kettlebells without the flat spot, and we found that they did not hold the rack in the same way. I guess we could have done the same thing with a rounded surface, but then the bell would not have laid down flat, and it would have been able to roll if someone were to drop it. And it is my feeling, my belief that your forearm should never be hitting right here if you're holding and using a kettlebell correctly. And besides making kettlebells, our job and goal is to teach people how to use kettlebells effectively. And why design a product that's not going to facilitate people using the kettlebells in the correct manner? So I hope this answers a lot of the questions of people that just, they've never seen kettlebells like this. They're so different from what they're used to. And I'm totally open to answering more questions if you have any. I love this product. This is a product straight from my heart, my wife's heart. We are both kettlebell lifters, enthusiasts, professionals. Like we've taught thousands and thousands of people how to use kettlebells. I compete still to this day at 44 and train lots of clients who compete, and we all use this, and we are breaking records regularly with this kettlebell. And the reason why we're able to break records is A, because it performs better than any other kettlebell, and B, because the way this kettlebell spreads out the weight, we're not incurring the tissue damage to the back of the forearm like these kettlebells were causing. And so we're not missing training time, right? We're not feeling run down because we're recovering from tissue damage. We're able to put all of our body's energy into training and recovering from the actual training process and not recovering from antiquated gym equipment.